Hi, folks. This is Auntie Kay, and we are here for another Oracles of Colonization. And very shortly, we are going to be joined by Armida for another talk. I'm just waiting for her to come in. And we're going to have another talk today titled Oracles of Colonization. And in these talks, we will be going through the oracle cards in the Land Back Tarot and Oracle of Colonization and discussing how these cards relate to our lives and our communities, as well as how they relate to tarot. And so Armida is in here, and I'm going to introduce myself, and then I will let Armida introduce herself. I'm Auntie Kay, or Krista DeMore Flute. I'm a Lakota and Cajun scoop survivor who was scooped from Standing Rock to southeastern Ontario, and I currently live in Algonquin territories. And this is where I've received the majority of my teachings and where my lived experiences and impacts of colonization has occurred. Hi, Armida.
Hi. So I'm Armida. I come from, my parents come from Mexico from a state called Nayarit, which is the home of the Huichol and Cora people. And I am Chicana. And so I'm coming from a place of reawakening and re-indigenizing. And I currently live in Eastern Ontario, on Algonquin territory as well. But I grew up in Southern California, in San Diego.
Yeah, that re-indigenizing our own selves after all those generational impacts of colonialism is pretty much our lived experiences for such a large portion of Indigenous people. These words are going to come back, I feel, in many introductions in this series. All right, so Armida and I shuffled the deck prior to starting this conversation, and then laid out the groundworks where we're going to go. So we're going to discuss the House of Oppression 13, which is a shadow to the major arcana. So this would be a shadow to card 13, death. And I'm going to, oh, it's going to take me a moment because I have to re-scroll because I so ridiculously closed the file from when we were talking to now. Okay. But you know, the lessons for me with computers, I'm figuring them out. Okay, oh, it's so much faster if I scroll on the side. Interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
Is one of my favorite cards in tarot, one of my most favorite cards in tarot, and it's the card that I look at when I'm considering a deck.
Oh yeah, eh? Nice.
Yeah.
Nice to know. I knew really pretty quickly what I wanted the death card to look like, which is a card we will be talking about shortly. Okay, so in the guidebook it says 13, House of Oppression. I'm going to get it right up into camera. This is a house oppression built. It looks inviting, cozy, and parental in order to draw you in. It understands. It offers you a place to try out your ideas under their guardianship. This is a house of oppression, though, and that's the truth behind its doors. Death lives here. So we can start with you, or we can start with my thoughts in creating this card and then how you feel about it. And we'll have like a fairly organic conversation back and forth.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a shadow to death, where we transform and where we change. And
Right.
instead, it offers you a door that's easier and safer and more comfortable. And it's inviting, but when you go through it, you know, it's not transformation, not in a positive way. It's that transformation to assimilation, to
Mm.
colonialism, to you know,
The cup, right?
finding, yeah, that safety, that's less scary. Emma and I talked about the tower and stuff yesterday, and you know how terrifying it is to get out from under that tower, which in Taro we know comes for you if you don't deal with your issues in 13.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the word that stood out to me a lot, and probably because I've been thinking about it a lot, is parental, right?
Yeah.
Because we come to see our parents as safety, right?
Yeah.
And but that parent-child relationship can be, and often is, one of oppression as well, right?
It really is.
Where children are we have this idea of childhood, this ideal of childhood, that is of innocence and of carefreeness and of these things that as adults we wish we had, right? But we don't, because we're bogged down by bills and by image and by all of these things that are imposed, right? And so we
Mm-hmm.
children, and you know they're so free, innocent, they're so this and that, but they're also in the way, right? In the way of adults doing adult things, right? So it's this like weird dynamic that we have with this relationship with children, right? And so parental, yeah, I've been thinking a
And
lot
that
about parenting lately,
and that whole
because we're
relationship,
parenting.
sorry, that whole relationship really describes colonialism and that parental behavior of colonizers over indigenous folks.
Right, yeah, because we weren't aware enough or mature enough, so we had to be subjugated, right? The
Yeah.
same way that we subjugate children, right?
Yeah. For being too free.
Yeah, exactly. For being too free, for being too, for allowing the land to just be wild, right? And it's like, it wasn't.
It was
uh,
not.
and
We were
it's not.
just simply the world's best cultivators on these two continents.
Exactly.
Especially you folks in the middle.
And so we've, I feel like now here we are as parents, like me and my partner, and we're parenting in a void, right? We're parenting in a vacuum, because we don't have our teachings, we don't have our community, we don't have these things, so we're parenting alone. And my eldest is coming to an age of this incredible awareness, right? This like cusp between like this sweet innocent child, and like I'm becoming, like I'm becoming aware, I'm becoming I know that there's me, and that there's everything else, and that I belong to everything else, but I don't know how, right? And it's a hard, as a parent, I'm finding it really hard to reconcile that with her, without that incredibly vast knowledge of all of this that we used to have, you know?
Yeah.
So and we lost all of that. My background, my ancestry was one of assimilation, and one of accepting, you know, in order to survive, right?
Coming
So
through the door because it was safe.
Come through the door because it was safe, right? Forget all of that and stay here. And Mexico did an amazing job. I mean, all of North America did, really, like all these colonial governments and institutions did, but Mexico really convinced us that we are native to Mexico, but not indigenous, right? And it really messes, you know, like it really messed up Mexico.
It serves the Southern American states if you don't believe you're indigenous.
Exactly,
it serves that border if you don't believe you're indigenous.
Mm-hmm. And so yeah, like I am of people who assimilated, who figured out how to integrate and how to assimilate and how to survive that way, right? So how do I take that and I have an incredibly hard time to with this, right? Because how do I now take that? Like I really have no clue what how to even begin to seek that knowledge, right? And so yeah, so that's where we are, right? We're in that house of oppression and trying desperately to get out, right? And
yeah,
and but it's an intense trap, man.
It is. It's a really huge trap, and it gets us in so many different ways, you know. And parental are, yeah, is paternalistic. That's the word I've been looking for in this conversation. Paternalistic. Yeah. That paternalistic issue. And, you know, I left my scoop home to de-assimilate and re-indigenize when I was 15. And I spent a long time doing that and relearning culture and everything. And I would go, but I was urban. I was an urban Indian. I lived downtown. My neighborhood got ghettoized, all of that. And, you know, I would go out of the city fairly regularly, more than a lot of my urbanized siblings, to be on the land. I frequently had a chance to do so for weeks or a month. And a lot of those of us, you know, living down there in the inner city did not have that opportunity. So I was really fortunate. And then as I approached my Saturn return, or my Saturn opposition, I knew I needed to get out of the city, that I couldn't really fully decolonize, re-indigenize in the city. And I had to get out. I had to get back out of one of those paternalistic doors of the house of oppression and get the hell out of the city. And and I was scared, and it took me 2 years to do it. And I was so pleased. I was like, I got out. And COVID hit, and I'm looking at myself in this small town in an apartment, staring at this block that has Shoppers, the gas station, the dollar store, No Frills, McDonald's, thrift store. I didn't need to leave that effing block. I'm like, I'm just in a smaller fucking house. I'm just in a smaller fucking house. And you know, and now I'm like in a trailer. But the reality is, like, I am still just trying to get outside of this door.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
that's where that's the experience, right? Like you think, yeah, I thought we were getting out of that door, right? I thought we were branching out, and I left home. I'm nowhere near California now, and everybody, all my family is still there. But here I am now, parenting without my cousins, without my siblings, without, and it's not like, I don't know that would have helped me, get there any faster, because they're also, all colonized, we're all colonized. Like but I'm now parenting in alone. Like, we're literally alone here. Like, we also got out of the city. We're on an 80-acre farm property, and it's just white people around us, right? So it's nice to be out here and to experience that being in the city, but we still rely on it a lot.
Yeah.
Like, my partner still works in the city. And it's, I was just talking about it this morning, like it's all a fabrication, right? And it's a fabrication that we build because none of it is real, right? Like, none of it should be here. Like, Canada should not be here, but it is. Yes. Right? So it's fabricated on here. And capitalism is fabricated on here. And we have to be a part of it. Like, we have no choice, right? So, yeah.
It's fabricated hugely on here. And like, when we think about the origins of it, there's this really good book called 7 Cheap Things by Patel and Moore. Mm-hmm. And there's also talks on YouTube by Patel talking about it. And, the capitalism needed things to be cheap in order to make continual growth profits. And, Africa supplied the cheap lives, and the Americas provided cheap resources, cheap land, cheap food, and still is, and now is the house of cheap lives. The Americas are a banquet table of cheap lives that they've collected all across colonialism. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's like we walk through a door of a giant and we don't realize we're like the dinner on the table.
Yep.
Yeah. So this card also relates to the death card, which is where we transform. And, I talk on this. Tell me it didn't shut off again. It's just a screen. Okay. So, okay, I give up on that. So I talk in the death card about how it's scary to go through that transformation.
Yeah.
My adopted grandma was one of my few adopted relatives that I had a really positive relationship with. And she talked about, some people, they struggle to die for a really long time because despite what they say about their religion, they're actually afraid. And if you're not afraid, you can pass through that doorway really easily. Mm-hmm. And I use the image of the owl as for a lot of us, this is one of the spirits that helps us through that doorway and calls us through that doorway. And for some of us, guides us down the spirit road. Some of us have other deities that actually take us down that spirit road once we cross through that doorway. But this fear that even though we're told it's really beautiful and transformation will be wonderful, we're terrified of it. Whereas with this card, you know, we know the truth of this card. Like, we know the truth of this doorway intently, and yet we're terrified to get out of it. Yeah.
And we're transformed when we go in it, right? Like the transformation has happened, right?
Yeah.
That's how we fit in it, right?
Because we're punished if we don't.
Yeah.
We're punished further if we don't fit into it. Yeah.
It's and we do that. We do a lot of transformations as we're brought up in this society, right? Because we transform. A lot of it happens very much on our own. Like, I'm thinking about I don't know how familiar you are with Lil Nas X and his new song, Call Me My Name, I think it's called, or something like that.
I've seen this stuff on internet, but I haven't checked it out yet. I keep saying I'm gonna go on YouTube and check it out, but then I get lost by tarot videos.
But it's a transformation too, right? Because he's come out as a gay man in a heavily heteronormative music genre, right?
Yeah.
And you know, the backlash that he's gotten from it, and from this video in particular, where he's depicting conquering his demons, right? He's depicting killing his demons and transforming those demons, and the backlash that he's getting for satanic worship, you know.
Yeah, I heard about that, and that's a huge part of why I want to see the video. I'm like, this sounds awesome.
It is awesome. But you know, those types of like mini transformations that happen throughout our lives, that a lot of them we're left to navigate on our own, right? Like for me, the transformation of having been raised Catholic to like, shit, Catholicism like fucked everything up, right? Like that transformation, I mean, I didn't do it entirely on my own. Like there was a lot of peer, you know, discussions and a lot of other people that did it before me and stuff like that. But my safety net, right? My parental figures were not a part of it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by on my own. Like it was not these safe people, right? It was or people that I came to see as my safety, right?
Yeah.
It was people who were struggling with all this with me, right? And so we go through transformations, right? But this ultimate transformation that is sometimes depicted as death or getting out of the door, right? We're so afraid of. So afraid of.
We are, because we are really heavily dependent on these systems. And you know, two of the systems that our colonizers most glorify are two of the most dangerous to us, and yet necessary to physical and financial survival, and that's like healthcare and education. And like these, I said in a speech once, you know, to settlers, these are your heroes, but there are death by neglect and school to prison pipeline. And they're a really good example of how we're really dependent on these systems. And it is really scary to go out of them. Both you and I homeschool. And this is part of how Armida and I know each other, is through Indigenous homeschooling and baby wearing, and then getting a BIPOC homeschooling group together, which, was really hard to move 2.5 hours away from.
And it was solved thanks to COVID.
And then COVID, because I was like, I'm visiting this homeschool group anyway, and then COVID. But yeah, stepping out of those systems is really terrifying. It's terrifying. It's terrifying when we teach our children to see that they need to get out of those systems, and what they have to do. My 20-year-old's dancing around the justice system right now. And, in trying to destroy and burn down this door for all of us, she's inside it, trying to convince it to not eat her up. And she's at, she has to keep facing these choices over and over again about, do I take a break? Do I stop doing the work of trying to burn this door down to protect myself, to not go to jail? It's really scary. It's really scary. And it's whatever part of it, whichever of the many doors we're trying to get out of, is scary.
Yep.
Yeah. One of the things you brought up was, I asked you, what card this makes you think of, and you said it made you think of not one of your cards, but a very specific traditional Rider-Waite card. Yeah.
I don't even know what, I tried to figure out what deck this book represents, and I haven't been able to figure it out.
It is a traditional Rider-Waite deck. It's I'm not sure which one specifically it is either. Armida is showing us Kitchen Table Tarot, and it shows a very traditional RWS 5 of Pentacles, where the freezing cold, poor, destitute folks aren't seeing that they can. Why don't you talk about it?
Yeah, so they're kind of just ill and a little bit ragged, and really just down on their luck or whatever. I hate that phrase, but and then you see, there's this ominous, scary looking bush back there, and then you see this well lit, warm and comfortable church there, right?
Yeah.
That you go into, they're walking in to seek refuge, to seek clarity, to seek comfort, to seek safety, right? And that card, the House of Oppression, reminded me of this.
It does.
Because,
and I struggle. I don't have a traditional Rider-Waite deck. I never have. I've had decks that are close to, because I hate the Rider-Waite images. I don't like it. I first saw it at 13, and I was like, oh, I guess I don't want tarot. And then it took me years before I came to actually have tarot, and I still hated that deck. I don't like the images. I don't like that 5 of Pentacles, because it does feel like this. It feels like our own beloved tarot is saying, come on, come back inside. You don't have to, be mournful over your situation, you could just come inside. And it's supposed to be a positive message in Taro. And I'm really sure it is for the people, who on the other side of that door.
For the people, comfort and that it sure is. Yeah, absolutely.
It sure is.
Like, come into the grace of God and the arms of Jesus and all that stuff. And I'm sure for some people that is exactly what they need, right?
Yeah.
But it's just, and you know what, like, if
the irony that it's a church.
Yeah, like if I were like, in a location illegally and my only request was to seek sanctuary in a church, I would do it, like, yeah, if this is my only way out, right? Like, because churches do offer sanctuary to, people who are illegal, right?
And we're gonna talk about another card shortly, but that issue of being illegal and needing to go to these churches who are, built by the people who declared you illegal.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the 6 of weapons or 6 of swords in my deck. In traditional tarot, that's where you move on to safety because the waters are dangerous. And in this one, I'm like, yeah, you're being evacuated because of floods. And you had to move because this is the safest path right now. But like, this escape is being offered by the people who flooded your lands in the first place. And this is really hard. But, this is the safest path right now. And hopefully you can regroup and, get home later. And that makes me think of that. And the classic 5 of drums, like, come in here, we're the safest path. And they are. The church is safer than going, to children's services or social services or whoever else is going to help you, is safer than, taking your chances through the legal immigration system. But
camps that Biden opened for children.
Yeah, the camps that Biden opened. I wish people would remember it was Biden who opened those camps. Yeah. Talk about coming through the door of oppression in hopes for safety and finding out that you're in the house of death. And it's like, well, the whole traveling to America is, I'm sure, people coming from south of the so-called US know that this is the monster eating them. And but where's the safest place to be? Is inside that monster. I've often wondered, whether it's refugees from Central and so-called Central and South America, or whether it's refugees from, all the other places Western civilization is terrorizing, that you have to come to the house of oppression, to the doors of Western civilization to escape the genocide they're committing on you. But in order to do so, you have to be transformed in this door.
And forget your culture, forget where you come from, because we speak English here.
We speak English. Water that shit down. Make the food more American Canadian so you can sell it for profit.
Yep. And that transformation is something that you don't even realize is happening, right? Like, you're just like, no, I chose to be here. I'm pulling myself up by my bootstraps, and It's like, yeah, yeah. You go on believing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Who owns those boots you think you're pulling up? Yeah. It's this really horrible catch-22.
Yeah.
And it's going to take some massive transformation for us to get out of it. So in the classic Five of Drums, we see that. We see that invitation into the house of oppression that is a positive card when so many of our oppressors read it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's, yeah. And but you have the Next World Tarot, one of my favorite decks, but I gave it away because I love my friends, and one of my friends needed an awesome decolonial deck too, and you have this too. And so let's talk about this decolonial look at the Five of Drums, and then we'll talk about my decolonial look at the Five of Drums.
So
you want to talk about
the image I see here is of a child sitting on what looks to be boxes, right? So not comforting. Like there's a dead plant next to her or him. I'm not sure what the gender is, but they're just sitting in boxes looking out of a window. And I would imagine that window is supposed to represent like this sort of like the door, right? And you see out that window and you see that there's like gentrification happening out that window, right? And
and this child is moving probably because of it.
Yeah. So this child is leaving whatever they knew was safe and comfortable, and is now having to pack up and watch that place just transform, right, away from her or him. But the light is inviting.
Yeah, the light in the world that they are not included in is inviting. And they are told to strive to be it. We know that child is going to be told by countless teachers to strive to get into that sunset that they don't belong to, that move them out of their home. Yeah.
Like I grew up in a neighborhood like this that became entirely gentrified, but it became gentrified by people who look like me, right? Who left to university, whatever, got their degrees, their education, their successful careers, and came back and bought out.
Oh wow!
Living there forever, right?
My neighborhood was gentrified more classically. Well, instead of being like white gay men, it was like white lesbian women. It's probably why when I date feminine people, they're usually two-spirit or or bi. There's this fear of those who gentrified my neighborhood. And then, the university students coming from the South Side wanting to come to this cool neighborhood that was being fixed up. And, it's hard. And it was just like dominoes.
Yeah. The gentrifiers.
Nature, creates disaster. And then that amplified it. So in 1998, the ice storm hit in Eastern Ontario, and our neighborhood was the last one in the city to get power back in January. We were 3 weeks. And so this like poor neighborhood in the city that went 3 weeks without power all got like $500 and $600 utility bills in 1998. And essentially it cleared the neighborhood.
Right.
Because nobody could afford to pay their bills when the power came back on.
Yeah.
I look at like what's gone on in Texas recently, and I'm like, oh man, anyway. we veered a little bit off track. Did we though? That moving and that gentrification and that child seeing it.
Mom, I'm thirsty.
I will help you out, or go ask Dee. Go ask Dee. Take him your cup and the juice. So one of the things I remember about the Next World Taro is Christy C.
Even will hear me.
No, I'm busy. You need to stop talking until I'm done. Sorry, that's really distracting in my hand. That Christy C. Road talks about how the child like is going to trust that their parents are going to look after them, which I think is really beautiful. Like the child is they're rising up in some ways in this action. Do you feel that child accepts that window, that doorway? Or do you think they're aware, like your oldest daughter, and are starting to see it?
Me, it looks like this child is very aware of what's happening, and it looks like they're aware of the difficulties that they're going to face, because where they once felt safe is no longer there, right? So they know that they're going to face difficulties and trying to find a place for themselves where they belong, right? And that's something that we all struggle with, right? Where do we belong?
Yeah, where do we belong? And that child bubble being popped so early for so many colonized people. That bubble gets popped really early. Yeah.
So to me, she looks very much in the know of the fact that her safety is being slipped from under her, and that she's going to have a lifelong struggle of belonging.
Yeah. And a life of struggles.
Yeah.
My 5 of drums. I also changed the imagery because I just can't stand that Catholic window or any of that. Sometimes in the 5 of Pents, you see some coins spilled or something broken and people picking it up. Star spinner, you see that. You know, those difficulties, and it's another way of saying, oh, there's these difficulties, but like, look what you have. And that can be a really difficult message for marginalized folks to be like, I know it's difficult, but look what you got. Look at the opportunities you have. That's like sometimes a really hurtful message.
Yeah.
And so I showed one of the attacks and invasions from Wet'suwet'en last year in 2020. In this one, Chief Freda Houston and other members of Wet'suwet'en were having a ceremony to honor missing and murdered Indigenous people. And the RCMP thought that was a good time for yet another invasion. And, you know, there's so many different ways we can respond and need to respond in these moments. And I'm a big believer in diversity of tactics being the most effective solution. And in this instance, they chose to keep singing, to just rise above that moment and not let, you know, the fact that they were being arrested stop them from singing and finishing the honoring of their culture and their ancestors. They weren't going to give up singing and being thankful for, you know, what they actually have, but have lost. but that connection and that culture and that ability to send those thanks and those prayers and those songs, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it, that the giving gratitude for what you have but have lost, right? Because it's both. We have it, but we've also lost it, right? Like, and that's really hard to grapple with, right? And sort of, not feel like I'm, for me, like I'm a pretendian, right? Just entirely colonized and just pretending to be, like, just, what is it, imposter syndrome?
And before you said that, I was thinking about, like, they didn't let their songs get taken from them in this moment. They held on to them through their arrests. And colonialism and our colonizers and our oppressors are actually the number one people telling us we're imposters in different ways. You're an imposter because you don't know your language because we stole it from you. You're an imposter because you practice our religions because we forced it and beat it onto you. You're an imposter because you live outside the territories we penned you in on and shrank and stole from you. You're an imposter because you don't know the culture we stole you from. Yeah.
Or you're also a what is it? You're, oh God, what's the word now? Appropriating because you wear jeans.
Yeah. But you drive a car, I love the ones who say, yeah, well, you own a computer. And I'm like, actually, I don't. But that's not the point, because we didn't appropriate this bullshit. It was forced on us. And that's it. We have to come up with the means of survival under colonialism. And to have a second means of survival is really expensive, which is why it's usually the middle class who has that outdoor life, right? Because they had the means for both sets of tools. And visiting the outdoors is a different set of tools, actually, than living there. But yeah, like the means have generally been stripped from us on purpose. It wasn't allowed. And so then we get told, well, if we successfully took this from you, you're an imposter, which goes to the whole getting rid of the Indian problem thing. And it's really frustrating when
that was the goal, right? Like
that was the whole goal. And when people are like, oh, well, you're, not indigenous enough because you weren't raised in your culture. It's like, for me, one of my comebacks is I'm a 60s scoop survivor. That is the experience of 70% of Indigenous people. I've lived the Indigenous experience you created. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's interesting, right? Because what that message came to me from a settler friend. She's like, you feel that way. You feel like an imposter because this is the Indigenous experience. Like, this is an experience that it's not just yours. It's a lot of Indigenous people, because this was created for you, right? Like, this was an Indigenous experience that was created for Indigenous people on this continent, right? Like, you have very little to do with that creation, right? And it's
like convincing your people in Mexico that you're native but not Indigenous.
Yeah. And it works well, because then we live our entire lives living in self-doubt and like, oh no, maybe not. I'll just forget about it. I'll just continue my 9 to 5 and yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Well, I spent a fair bit of time um, trying to do both, trying to believe I could have one foot inside this door and one foot outside this door. And I really believed that for a long time. And a lot of us say that, like, oh, I have one foot in this world and one foot in the other world. And I don't even think that's possible anymore. I think if you have one foot in each world, what you are is a ghost.
Queen. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't want to live my life as a ghost. I want to get like all the way out this door. But I'm not sure we entirely know how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some of the ways that help you feel like you're heading towards getting out of this door that you do for your family?
Well, homeschooling is a big one. Our entire reason for moving out of the city and into the country was to try to do as much for ourselves as possible. But even that, I've come to realize is such a colonial way to do it, to think about it, because like there's no way I can do it by myself.
It takes a back-breaking amount of work to sustain an individual family, and studies show it takes about 4 hours of work a day to sustain a tribal community.
Yeah, and so we did this. We made this move, thinking in this way, and then quickly realized, shit, that we bit off a lot more than we could chew, right? So it's become, I guess, I don't know what now, like more symbolic, but I'm still trying to figure out, because there is, we now have this land that belongs to us, and just trying at this point our best to keep it from developing, because everybody around us is like cutting down all trees and putting in as many crops as they possibly can, right? Are you still there?
Yeah, sorry.
So anyway, so homeschooling is one way that every time that I think, oh God, I can't, like, I'm fucking up, like, I don't, I should just send them to school, I think, no, like that's the wrong answer, right? That's the way back into that door. And so that's become the biggest way, and just trying to figure out how to better support Indigenous sovereignty here, because we don't see ourselves moving from here, to try to reconnect my own Indigenous community. I don't see us as doing that, right? So trying to connect with what is happening here and support Indigenous sovereignty here.
Yeah,
is where we're putting our efforts right now.
Very similar. After years of like fighting in like activist arenas, I'm out in the country, and I'm about to build this spring summer a experimental tiny home using various land-based technologies, because yeah, same thing. I know that it's too much work to fully support myself from the land. It needs to be a community effort with a lot more community knowledge about cultivating the land for food in natural ways and not in farming methods, European methods, food, forest cultivation. So I'm trying to downsize how much I have to pay for housing, for heat, and for food, and how much I can do that for myself. And rebuilding a small business for myself. Again, done a few small businesses, but this time my goal is like, I want my expenses reduced.
Yeah.
I'm hoping by like another $500-600 and per month, so that I can live, so that I don't have to make as much money in capitalist colonialism to survive at a reasonable, healthy way, in homeschooling too. And I am hoping that experimenting with indigenous technologies for the home will benefit other land back communities, as more and more land back actions involve small scale living. So you know, I'm in my daughter's territory and she's fighting land back in other people's territories right now, but you know, maybe this will benefit our people's fight in the territory you and I and she both live in at some point. That's, yeah. What can I do to create a foundation for these young warriors? Because we didn't succeed in my day. And we want them to succeed now, you know.
Right.
Yeah. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work when you just know you're like, you know, and we're doing all these things, like we're scrambling down some dark hallway trying to get through this door all together. Yeah. But at least some of us recognize it, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the case for a long time. A lot of our ancestors talked about the paternalism of the state, so they were aware it was a weird, unhealthy relationship too, you know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And the institutions that led us to believe that they're safe, right? Like for me, schools led me to believe that that these pathways and doorways are safe and where I want to be, right?
Yeah. Well, that's why shopping and schools remain open in lockdown, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I hear more restrictions are coming again from Ford tomorrow or something like that. And
yeah,
but yeah, shopping and schools are still open, right?
Yeah, the foundation of capitalism.
Yeah.
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 All right. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I really enjoyed it. And it is really nice to talk to you. I miss living closer. Although I think now that I've moved again, when COVID and traveling becomes easier, I think I've actually moved back east some. It might actually be about the same distance as I was before.
Yeah, I think I think you might be a little bit closer actually than Kingston to us.
Oh, nice.
It's like an hour and a half for us, and I did look up. Are you in Maynooth?
I'm east of Maynooth, actually. I'm in Maple Leaf, which doesn't really show up on a map.
Okay. So I think it's just slightly less time to drive up there, but
All right.
yeah, we'll have some visits.
Well, and with you guys having a large property too, I'll contact you about refooting the forest, which is like another step outside of here.
Yeah.
Since you guys are protecting forest amongst all your settler neighbors who are chopping it down.
Yeah, they just finished chopping down right next to us, like the whole line that separates our property from the next property, like just chopped it all down. Like they're not even gonna get anything out of it. Like they can plant their crops right up to the tree. Like, but you know, who knows what's going on in their head.
Who knows? All right. Thank you. I will see you later.
Bye.
This was so good. Enjoy your day.
You too.